Coming up in today's video.
Just the robots, they finished him in one. Nice work. Contemptor Sam's grumbling like a dreadnought in the background. Oh, double one. Awful timing. Oh, blooming heck. Oh, he's pulled a bait and switch on me. I thought he was... So, it's getting pretty sketchy.
Hello and welcome to the Scholar Progenium. We've got a battle report lined up for you today. Should be very exciting. We're doing it. We've got a full Dreadnought army list. And Tactical Terminator armor, Tactical Dreadnought armor, Terminator armor. We're fighting off against the Mechanicus. We just rolled the dice, but I messed up the filming, so we're going to keep it. Sam's picked his deployment zone. He's setting up first, the first unit. So I'll be with you after I've gone through the army list and we've deployed and we've talked about secondaries. So first of all, I'll take you through the Dreadnought list. Now in terms of general chassis, as you can see, we have 9 chassis here. Now I'll take you from left to right. We have a standard Dreadnought with twin last cannon and missile launcher. We have a Dorado Dreadnought with auto cannons, the Alias missile launcher and the twin heavy bolters. We have a Venerable Dreadnought with twin last cannon and a fist and storm bolter. We have a Furioso with smoke launchers, twin talons and twin storm bolters. We have a Redemptor. This guy has the heavy plasma thing. He has the Gatling cannon and twin storm bolters. Then we have 2 Contemptors, both loaded out the same. The Kerry's assault cannon, and both have storm bolters. And then finally, to go with those guys, we have a Venerable Dreadnought, a second one in the list. And this guy again has an assault cannon and storm bolter. Heading up the list in terms of dreadnoughts, we have a Librarian Dreadnought, and he of course will have, well not of course, in terms of his psychic powers, go for something slightly different in this list. He actually forsakes the quickening. He does not have the quickening, he doesn't go Super Saiyan himself, but he'll have the ability to give one of the other dreadnoughts a 5-up in vulnerable save. And that really tips the balance for this list, because at that point you've got quite a few chassis with 5-up in vulnerable saves, and you've got your Terminators. So as you can see, of course, I've got 2 units of Terminators there. Now I'll take you through the list in just a little bit more detail in terms of how the units operate, because they do operate in subsections. So first of all, we have the 3 Assault Cannon Dreadnoughts. Now these guys love to storm up the battlefield, take an objective, and push on forward, leaving one of them guys behind. And the dreadnoughts will often, the tactical dreadnought armor, the Terminators, will often drop down to secure objectives that these guys have taken, and these guys will push on into the enemy lines. You're going to lose 1, you're going to lose maybe even 2, but these guys do not stop going at the enemy until you've claimed victory. They are so cool as a unit, just blasting through screens with their assault cannons and charging the valuable units behind. They really do take care of themselves and the opponent. And of course, a big part of this list is the fact that almost every unit has Duty Eternal, which means all damage that hits the army is reduced by 1 if it's one of the dreadnoughts. Obviously, the Terminators don't have that rule, but really valuable, helps keep the unit alive and helps keep them coming towards the opponent. Now, in terms of fire support, very simply, we have the Dorado. Now, he's obviously the anchor of the fire support unit. These guys are going to hold objectives. They can be quite flexible, and I've got a Venerable there. He's got Feel No Pain, of course, as does the assault cannon guy. Helps him stay in the game a little bit longer, and also that Fist just helps save these guys if any nasty units come into my back lines. And obviously the other dreadnoughts can look after themselves because they can stomp stuff. And these guys, they're not absolutely dripping with firepower, but they have a lot of firepower, and certainly enough to give fire support to the other dreadnoughts as they close the gap. Now finally, in terms of sections, we have the Librarian, Furioso and Redemptor. Now these guys can kind of work as a subsection in themselves, or the Furioso and the Redemptor can move up as a section to maybe harass the enemy lines and really put some pressure on an area of the battlefield together. The Furioso and the Redemptor in close combat are just an absolutely lethal combination. The Redemptor brings enough firepower for both of them. Really nice combo. And of course, the Librarian, if he's near these guys, he can give one of them a 5-up invulnerable save, which is really nice. the librarian, because he's got wings, he can flip between the two sort of blocks of dreadnought, if that makes sense, the assault unit and then the sort of this pressure unit. And the units can obviously swap around. They don't always work this way. There's a lot of flexibility in the list. Dreadnoughts, especially the larger ones, have quite a decent move. They're not always moving 6 inches. A lot of them move 7-8 inches. The librarian obviously can wings around to give support as needed. So he very much does play the support role here, and he gets involved in combat where he's needed. Now, finally, we have our other two characters here. This is a twin Vanguard detachment, I should mention. So I've spent 6 CP before the game starts, which is quite hefty. Now, my chaplain, he doesn't have anything fancy. He's just a Terminator chaplain, obviously keeping with the theme of the list. He's got that tactical dreadnought armor, and he has, I think it's called Recitation or Recitation of Focus, and that's the one that gives +1 to wound. Then we have a Terminator captain, and he's not loaded out like he would be if I was using him in a Flesh Terrors list or something like that, of course. In fact, this guy has the icon of the angel to give rerolls to charges for units that are nearby within 6 inches, and he also has the gift of foresight, just because it's the best warlord trait. Now, he drops down with the 2 Termi units, or with one of them, it depends what I'm trying to achieve. But what his main goal to do is that the assault Termis certainly will drop down near him and then use his reroll. So they've got a rerollable 8-inch charge when they drop in, which is really good. And having hammer assault Terminators is actually really good when they drop in with a rerollable charge. That captain can hold objectives, back those guys up, give them reroll 1s in combat, that kind of thing. He can go off, do his own thing. There's loads of stuff that a captain and Terminator armor can do when it deep strikes behind the enemy lines, and you've got 2 other units of Terminators causing chaos and loads of dreadnoughts running around. So really, really valuable, simple, straightforward collection of characters there. Now, finally, we've got the Relic Terminators and the Assault Terminators. Now, the Relic Terminators, they come with all the goodies, and they're just a super cool unit. And as I've described, they're going to deep strike down and either hold an objective that I've already taken with my dreadnoughts, or into the opponent's lines to get involved themselves and do some assaults with the help of that captain. And then the assault Terminators, as I've already described, what they're going to do is they're going to drop down with the help of that captain, and they're just going to start wreaking havoc in the opponent's lines. And obviously they can score me objectives, line breaker, engage on all fronts, that kind of thing, depending on what I take with the list. So all in all, that is the Blood Angels. Now, the Mechanicus list it's quite a nasty one, but with some just little bits here and there that are personal touches for Sam. So he's got Belisarius Call, of course, an absolute machine. He has a 9-inch reroll everything bubble for hits, in shooting, which all hits. That's really, really good. He also has a Tech Priest Dominus. Now, Tech Priest Dominus has an eradication array, a macro stubber, and in terms of warlord traits and such, Belisarius Call has the Statics Psalm code, which I believe he has to take, and the Tech Priest Dominus has the Omniscient Mask. Now, in terms of troops, he's starting off with a nasty block of Cataphron Destroyers, and each one of these, he's got 3 of them. They all have the plasma cover. Now, they're not the super armoured ones, but they do combine nicely with the robot unit, which will come a little bit later. He's then got 2 units of Rangers and 2 units of Skitarii Vanguard. The first unit of Rangers is a 5-man squad with 2 sniper rifles and 2 transuranic arquebuses. And the second unit of Skitarii Rangers has 6 with galvanic rifles and 3 with arc rifles. Then in terms of his vanguards, he's got a 5-man squad, and the leader has a radium carbine. He's got a 10-man squad. Again, the leader has a radium carbine, just like the standard guys in the unit, but he's got 3 plasma calivers in there. So he's got 3 arc rifles, 3 plasma calivers. In terms of his elites, he's got a Datasmith, Cybernetica Datasmith, and I know he's building up some special unit that gives him +1 to hit at the moment. He's got that on his painting table, and he'll be adding that in soon. He's then got a unit of Sicarii and Rust Stalkers. Now these guys, number one job I know is for him from playing against many games against Sam, is to try and get off the deploy scramblers, and then he'll harass soft units. These guys cut up light units really easily. Not something present in this list, but still a great scoring unit for the Scutari. They're usually quite slow moving, and these guys let them get around the board a bit more. Now he's also got a Sidonian Dragoon, just one with the Taser Lance. Again, helps him get around the board, gives him that little bit more mobility. This guy can look after himself in a pinch and put out some damage in a pinch. Then obviously we move on to the heavy support, and this is where it really counts in this list. So he has 4 Castellan robots, and each of them is loaded up to the 9s with phosphor blasters. I think they've each got 3 heavy phosphor blasters, and these guys put out an insane amount of shots. I can tell you from experience, these guys will cut through most units if they focus down on them, and they can all shoot at separate units and tear stuff up as well. I think they put out 9 shots each when they've got a 4-up invuln, and then they can switch like a 5-up invuln and put out 18 shots each, but they have to stay still. Really, really nasty unit, and that's each robot. It's absolutely crazy. They can just tear through whole flanks. Then for a little bit of extra heavy firepower, he's got an Onager Dune Crawler and a Scorpius Disintegrator. The Dune Crawler comes with a neutron laser, heavy stubber, 2 Cognis heavy stubbers, and the Scorpius Disintegrator comes with a ferromite cannon, and then he's got a load of missiles, torpedoes on that thing. Finally, of course, he has the Archaeoraptor Stratoraptor, which is what I like to think of as a Dune Ornithopter in my eyes. But essentially this thing comes with las cannons, and it comes with more of those phosphor blasters that the robots have. So really capable weapons. This guy obviously helps. Bit more mobility, bit more getting around the board, scoring extra secondaries and giving more options. So there are a couple of, if you're not that familiar with the standard cheese that comes with Mechanicus, this list can certainly bring it, and he's got a few stratagems to look out for, and he combines these all together a lot of the time. Now, Wrath of Mars is 2CP, it gives him mortal wounds on 6s like a sniper. So 6s to wound, give him mortal wounds, and he can put that on his robots. So, you know, they're putting out 18 shots each. That's like just so many shots, and the 6s to wound, they're going to come in droves. They're just going to peel the armor off units, destroy units just with mortals alone. And it allows them to really split their fire as well, leaning on those mortals to rack up the damage and ensure they get the job done even if they split their fire. And then he's also got another 2CP stratagem that gives him +1 to the robots and the servitors both to hit, as long as they're within 6 inches of each other. That means, you know, call nearby, they're all in a bubble, they're all going to be close together. That's going to be a really nasty fire base. And then all of the vehicles, they just can basically they've all got their own individual +1 stratagem, so he can make all of his vehicles hit on +1, so you can hit on 2s with all of those heavy vehicles. So, you know, all in all, really, really nasty. And as I've mentioned, the Rust Stalkers, they can spend 1 CP to redeploy somewhere else on the battlefield. So those are the lists. Now, in terms of stratagems, Sam took... Sorry, I've got my notes here. Wrong one, my bad. In terms of stratagems, Sam took big game hunters, of course, because of the dreadnoughts. He took deploy scramblers, which is an easy one to get, and he took engage on all fronts. And I think I mentioned all of those before. And big game's obviously a very obvious one for him. And then I took big game hunter as well, because he's got a lot of vehicles in there. I think it's not max 15 points available, but it's a very solid one. I'm going to need to kill those vehicles to stay in the game. I took line breaker, and I took raise the banners, and those my Terminators do a lot of the heavy lifting on those. As I've mentioned, as I was going through the list, I can deep strike the Terminates down, raise banners, and I can obviously deep strike and cause havoc and line break, and I'm going to be aiming to be in the opponent's line. So that's the list, that's the secondaries. We'll get back to the deployment and the battlefield now.
Okay, so here we have the field of battle after deployment. We've both kind of done a refused flank on each other, a bit weird. We're playing mission 2 in the big rulebook, so we've got 4 objectives. One there, one in my deployment zone, my chaplain's just sat on it. One over here with my assault dreads facing off against it. Now Sam started off putting his Scutari infantry and an Inquisitor and his plane and his Rust Stalkers over facing this objective. So I was like, right, I'll put my anti-infantry assault guys there to assault them. But then he tricked me, and by the time I'd put down my backfielders holding my back objective, my gun units, Sam had swung round. He put 20 Scutari infantry over here. He's got his cataphracti murder plasma dudes. Destroyers is the technical term. He's got his Scorpius.
Yep, Disintegrator.
Disintegrator. He's got a Dune Crawler, and he's got some Rangers over here, and he's got Call in range of all of those. And then, as I mentioned, the robots just over on this flank, ready to push up on this objective. So we're both strong to take on one of these objectives. It might end up being almost a lengthways game. We've got a big piece of line of sight blocking in the middle, but if we can shift our units up into it, we can shoot through it. So we've rolled off, but I messed up the recording again. Sorry, new camera. Sam got a 1, I got a 3, so the Dreadnoughts will be going first. So we'll be with you after Blood Angel's turn. So an interesting start for the Dreadnoughts. Not necessarily exactly what I wanted, but I mean, still good, you know, swings and roundabouts. So I pushed up, I put the Redemptor and the last kind of normal Dreadnought into this cover so they could shoot through it, but they could also be seen. Then the Dreado just slunk around here so we could shoot at the robots over there. Furioso ran forward, line of sight blocked against most of Sam's army, but some of it can shoot him. Whether he wastes shots on that guy is another question. Psychic wise, the Librarian Dread winged up onto this objective, and prior to doing that he gave the Redemptor a 5-up invuln. Then we got onto the shooting phase. Now these guys, the first 2 Dreadnoughts with assault cannons just tore through the Scutari that were here, and then the final Contemptor Dreadnought just shot and killed the Inquisitor, killing that Inquisitor off. So great little kill there, no psychic from Sam anymore. Then everything else basically shot through at the robots over here, but Sam just kept getting invuln saves. He's 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up, and eventually I killed 1 and got another one, just 2 wounds on him.
Yeah, just 2 wounds.
So they're sure to be fixed, and so it's essentially, in real terms, I've killed 1 robot. So unfortunate there with the rest of my shooting, but this flank and this objective undoubtedly secured. We've got a lot of invulns across the board, so we're not too worried about plasma and that kind of thing. I mean, we are worried about it, but you know, we've got this big line of sight blocking bit of terrain here, which is covering a lot of our forces from the majority of Sam's firepower. We're going to force him to shift around a little bit, and yeah, we've taken control of 2 objectives. I should mention that the chaplain gave the Duretto +1 to wound, and it still didn't do much against the robots. So I'm just, you know, rocking those 4-up invulns. So we'll be with you after Scutari or Mechanicus. What's your faction even called now?
Mechanicus.
Mechanicus, turn 2. Turn 1. Very interesting turn. The Blood Angels and the Mechanicus have both had, you know, all right turns. So first things first, the Mechanicus relinquished this corner of the board entirely, teleporting their, what are these guys called again? Rust Stalkers into the far corner. So they're behind this line of sight blocking cover, because this is line of sight blocking, and they have done deploy scramblers. Sam actually used his final sniper over on this objective, moved him down a level and deployed a scrambler over there, and then he used these Scutari over here to deploy a 3rd scrambler, so locking in 10 points worth of secondaries, a great first move. As predicted, he swung his entire flank around to secure this objective, and he started pouring fire in. He had to kill my Furioso before he could start shooting at the Venerable. And it took a little more damage than he would have liked, and in the end, this Venerable survived with 5 wounds, thanks to that power that reduces all damage by 1, and the fact that he's got a 6-up feel no pain. The rest of the shooting went, the robots and a few other units shot into the Duretto. Just the robots, they finished him in 1, nice work. And finally, everything else ended up going into the Contemptors. They only did 1 wound to the Contemptor. I had invuln saves, as you can see, on my Redemptor, on 2 Contemptors, and the Venerable House of Feel No Pain. So I've absolutely secured this objective, and a lot of my units were actually behind this central line of sight, blocking bit of terrain. So Sam couldn't shoot a couple of his Scutari special weapons and that kind of thing. But all in all, a reasonable turn. 2 Dreadnoughts destroyed, the Furioso and the Doredo. So we'll be with you. I've got some deep striking stuff now. It's time for me to start scoring some secondary, so we'll be with you after the end of Blood Angels, turn 2. Hey then, things are getting interesting here. My hands are shaking because I'm excited. So, brought my Terminators in here on this objective. I brought my other unit of Terminators with hammers in on this objective, and the Captain with the reroll charge relic. So it's not as choppy himself, but he's helping the Termies. Because obviously I pushed Sam entirely off the left flank. These Dreadnoughts continued to push round towards his forces. They ended up chancing a cheeky charge, but they didn't actually get anything off in the end against this Chicken Walker. In terms of shooting, these guys all hammered their assault cannons and storm bolters into Sam's plasma guys, and he's got 1 left with 2 wounds. The Redemptor messed up his shooting, as he seems to be doing every turn. And so the robots took barely anything. I think, did you take 1 wound over the course of the whole turn?
2 wounds.
2 wounds. Oh yeah, because you had healed him. I also shot all of these guys, blast cannons, and a crap missile into the robots. Again, Sam just made all his invuln saves. I may as well give up shooting these guys. Spammed a couple of lucky assault cannon shots from my Venerable at the plane. I managed to do 2 damage. I'd spent 1 CP to make this Venerable honour the chapter or whatever it is, so everyone was rerolling 1s. So killed his plasma off, but his robots, they're just so unkillable. He's not shooting on double shooting. He's keeping them safe by keeping their 4-up invuln, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of charges, I got a mammoth. I think I rolled a 10, 11, I rolled an 11, got a 12-inch charge straight through the base of the flyer and into the tank and just wrecked it. Got 5 wounds through. With the Redemptor, Sam saved 1, I think. Did you? Or none? No, just 2. You saved 2, but on 6s, there was still enough. 9 plus D3 just blew. He didn't blow up, but I then consolidated into these guys. They did a wound back, didn't they, in close combat, which was pretty cool. But they're now locked down. They're not going to be shooting. Now that was it. These guys didn't shoot or didn't get anything off. These guys charged, and they got again a massive mighty charge. They got a 10 plus 1, and they just beat the crap out of the Scutari holding this objective. So I'm now on 3 objectives, locked down with Terminators. I also have 2 units behind my enemy lines, so I'm getting 4 points for that at the end of the turn. And if Sam doesn't shift me off, I'm getting 15 points at the start of my 3rd turn. I actually started the turn with 2 objectives, so 10 points. And Sam is, of course, only starting his turn with 5 points for primaries. So it's getting pretty sketchy. Sam said he's feeling quite hemmed in by the Dreadnoughts, but he is taking a toll on me. So we'll see. These guys, actually, hilariously, they did more wounds to themselves with mortal wounds bouncing back off the robots than they did to the robots. Anyway, we'll be with you after Scutari and Mechanicus turn 2. Very interesting turn for the Scutari. They pulled back away from the advancing Contemptor. Sam's grumbling like a dreadnought in the background. These guys went round. Sam contemplated going into shooting mode, but as these guys have been just holding ground relentlessly, decided to keep in 4-up invuln mode. He then unleashed some fire. Most of the shots around here went into the Redemptor and took like 7 or 8 wounds off him, got him sort of softened up. And then the plane shot, he sort of flew over and shot into my Venerable, and it actually took all his shooting and to finish him off. And the rifle guys, I think...
Yeah, just a standard rifle.
Standard rifle did the last wound or something like that. I think this guy actually pranged his last cannons into my Contemptor over here, but I think he did like 2 wounds, and then the Contemptor was taken down to 8 wounds taken from this plasma guy over here, and I think 2 wounds came through from his flat 3 damage weapon. Having that -1 to every damage is just so bloody good. And it's like army-wide, it's like having an extra like trait, isn't it, essentially? Only the Termies don't have it. So then Sam, seeing that he had several dreadnoughts on low wounds, he decided to split the robots and try and finish 3 dreadnoughts. He entirely bounced off this guy. He didn't get a single wound, just totally messed it up. Then one guy shot into the Redemptor and did like a couple of wounds, like 2 wounds, bounced off. And this guy did actually shoot over to the Contemptor around the corner and managed to finish him off. So neither blew up. Then he charged the Redemptor in close combat. He took a gamble, even though I had 2 CP left to try and interrupt. He struck at the Redemptor. He left him on, I think, 1 wound from Call. I then returned. I was like, do I try and kill this guy and save the...
Call bounced.
Call bounced, was it?
He was only on 2 wounds.
Yeah, he was only on 2 wounds. So Call tried to attack, he bounced. Then I interrupted my last 2 CP. I was like, do I go for this guy and like flatten him? Or do I go for Call? I gambled on Call. I got 6 wounds through, which would have flattened that guy. But Call is on 2 wounds now. Absolutely excellent for me. And then the Tech Priest Dominus finished off the Redemptor. He had 2 wounds left. Sam charged a Chicken Walker into this Contemptor, trying to just finish him off because he wants to really thin out these guys that are sort of just running rampant. But unfortunately, he charged in, missed all his attacks, and then I just punched back and tore the Chicken Walker apart. So we're going on to the Blood Angels turn 3 now. Now we're scoring 15 points at the start of this turn because I'm holding Sam's home objective. I'm holding this objective with the Termies and just dreadnoughts and loads of stuff. And then Sam, although he did get me quite down on that objective, he hasn't quite managed to get me off, and I do have a chaplain hidden in there as well. So 3 objectives, 15 points. If I can just run up the backfield with these guys, stay behind enemy lines, that's another 4 points. So we're racking up the points. We've still not got rid of all of Sam's nasty firepower. He's still got so much nasty firepower, but we'll see if we can just... We've got him... He's trying to score, engaging all fronts, and he's currently in 1 table quarter. It's the wrong way round. You've got 2. Good old Flyers. Good old Flyers. And did you? Oh, and here. Oh, blooming heck. Oh, he's pulled a bait and switch on me. I thought he was in 1 table quarter. He's in 3. He's scoring.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, there we go. Sneaky Skatari. Okay, very nice. These Rustalkers are so clutch. They can deploy scramblers. They can go behind enemy lines. A little bit of CP to redeploy them. Absolutely lovely jubbly. And they tear through backline infantry like butter. They're rubbish against elite stuff or anything else, but backline infantry, butter. Hot knife. You do the math. Okay, so we're on to... So you scored, what, 2 points at the end of that? +5 at the beginning. And we're on to Blood Angels turn 3 now, I believe. Rock and roll, rip and tear. A classic Blood Angels turn 3. This may be all Dreadnought armour, but nonetheless, these are Blood Angels starting. Turn 3 is where we rock and roll. The Hammernators decided to relinquish Sam's home objective, and I tried to advance the captain onto it, but I failed. But I just kept these guys in his deployment zone, so that's another 4 points for behind enemy lines. It's not called that line breaker. The Hammernators, then the Contemptor advanced to about here by the building. And I decided, you know what, I might not get Call, but I'd be stupid not to prank off a shot at him as he's the closest model. Got 2 wounds through with the assault cannon, and then Sam rolled double 1. Awful timing, and Call bit the dust. This Contemptor just absolutely wrecked. All my Contemptors with 3 assault cannon wielding dreadnoughts is nasty. I'm just saying that right now. What a squad. Of course, my chaplain, just hung around underneath here, securing this objective and making my standard dreadnought +1 to wound, which then helped him kill 1 of the robots. So I have managed finally to kill half the robot squad off. The Librarian Dreadnought moved up to about here, then he winged across to within 6 inches of this guy, tried to get up off an invuln save but failed, and then he was ready for the charge against the plane because he's flying. Then essentially we did the charges. The Hammernators went into the Dune Crawler, no problem, no questions asked. Turn 3, just absolutely melted him. I think 21 successful wounds in total. The Contemptor went into the Tech Priest. So and it was literally also, it was like I chanced, I think it was a 10-inch charge, rolled an 11, got 12 inches, just went straight into him, beat the crap out of him, and then consolidated into the Scutari, so really locking up their shooting. And then finally this guy went in. He actually did manage to mess up his fist charges, but then that force halberd came in, did 6 wounds to the plane and just finished him off. And I had put a bit of shooting from these guys into the plane, softened him up by I think 4 wounds. So the plane popped as well. So we're currently holding 1 objective, 2 objectives. Sam's only got the 1 objective and can't really make his way back towards his home objective, so it's looking pretty sketchy for the Scutari. And as you'll remember, in the previous turn, Sam also managed to trick me into getting engaged on all fronts, but we've managed to shut that down, so he's only engaging on 2 fronts. But as you can see at the start of his turn, he's moving up towards my home objective. So this really is a sort of we're cycling and wheeling round with our forces, aren't we? Okay, so we'll be with you after Scutari, turn 3. So at the end of the Mechanicus turn, they poured fire into the Contemptor, trying to ready him up for a charge from this Tech Priest. Unfortunately, he only took 3 wounds. So the Priest, because he's on -1 damage per hit, that Priest only has a flat 2 damage weapon, so couldn't finish him off. The Termies are right here, ready to close in with the Contemptor on the rest of the Mechanicus forces. These robots are still going strong, and the Scutari have just actually charged and taken the Chaplain. So I've lost my home objective here. I reckon I could probably fight it back because the Chaplain took 2 wounds, but he killed 2 Scutari. And then that was basically it. Sam did some shooting, trying to get rid of this guy so he could fully take me off the objective. But eventually, again, because of -1 damage, the Plasma only did 1 damage each because there's no point overcharging it. Yeah. And eventually, essentially, did 4 wounds in total, or 3 wounds because he'd already taken 1. So he failed to shift me off this objective, which was his sort of final push, because he would have started his next turn with 2. It would have been more difficult for me to take that back. But as this Dreadnought's lived, and my Chaplain's lived when he's tried to snatch that objective, Sam is calling it GG, because he thinks I'm already ahead in points, and it's only going to get wider, the gap. So the Blood Angels, they take the victory with the first company ho. Now the final points were essentially 53 to the Blood Angels without a painting score. It would have been 63 with, but I totally forgot to base these guys, just busy week at work. And then Sam got 45, including painting score, or 35 without. So I think it's an absolutely resounding victory for the Blood Angels, first company. I'm very pleased with that, and I hope you guys are too. And as I was saying, in a previous video, the Dreadnought army list is rocking and rolling finally after years of development, and I could not be more happy. So we'll leave it at that. This has been the Scholar Progenium. Hope you found this entertaining. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.